The storm had already swallowed half the horizon when Karl's Stonefang reached the ridge. Snow spiraled around him in thick, violent waves, driven by winds sharp enough to flay thinner creatures. His fur bristled beneath the weight of ice building along his shoulders, but he barely felt the cold. Fear had burned all sensation out of him. His cubs were somewhere inside that white chaos. The frozen den lay ahead, a maze of ancient tunnels carved through cliffs of translucent blue ice. It had stood for centuries, used by generations of Varkan hunters as a winter shelter. But today it was a trap, and the storm on its way would bury it for weeks, perhaps the entire season. If the cubs weren't found before the final wall of snow hit, no one would reach them again. Karl growled a low command. "Stay close. The ground fractures here." 3 warriors followed his lead, their silhouettes hulking and silent behind him. Claws dug into the ice as they descended toward the main cavern mouth. Frost serpent tracks etched the snow, fresh, winding patterns that tightened the tension in Karl's chest. The creatures hunted warmth. His cubs radiated it. He paused at the cliff edge, scanning the wasteland below. His breath steamed against the air, forming a ghostly cloud that drifted toward the storm wall. Everything was shifting: wind, snow, the faint rumble of ice cracking beneath the pressure of the approaching supercell. One of his warriors, Rhakor, approached. "Alpha. The scout's final report. Are you certain a human craft fell near the den?" "I am certain," Karl said. "They saw metal and fire on descent. No beast leaves a trail like that. Could the humans have taken the cubs? They would not live long if so." Rhakor nodded grimly. Humans had been in conflict with the Varkan for over a cycle. Strange machines, strange ideals, strange willingness to risk themselves for nothing. Karl distrusted them not out of hatred, but because their actions defied logic. A species willing to walk into danger without knowing the terrain was unpredictable. And unpredictable meant dangerous. He picked up the pace as the wind rose again. The storm's outer edge crashed against them like a physical force. Snow clung to his faceplate, obscuring his vision. He wiped it clean, ducked low, and sprinted. The frozen den appeared as a distorted fissure half buried in drifting snow. The entrance was narrower than usual. Ice shelves had collapsed during the earlier tremors. Karl sniffed the air. His nostrils flared. He caught faint traces: cub scent, fear, exhaustion. Still alive. He forced himself not to imagine the alternative. They squeezed through the opening one by one, their claws scraping ice. Inside, the wind vanished, replaced by a dense, muffled silence. Bioluminescent minerals cast a pale blue glow across the cavern walls. Ice fibers hung like glass roots, chiming softly as the temperature shifted. Karl crouched, pressing one large paw against the ground. Warmth. Faint but detectable. He motioned forward. They moved deeper. The group descended the sloping tunnel. Karl's pulse quickened as he picked up alternating scents: his cubs, frost serpents, and unexpectedly, charred metal. Human. He bared his fangs. The cub's trails swerved sharply, then vanished into a collapsed section of tunnel. But beside the rubble lay something deeply out of place: a strip of thermal fabric. Too small for a Varkan. Too smooth. Too uniform. A human emergency blanket. His stomach tightened. Rhakor crouched beside it. "Alpha, this came from a crash kit." Karl didn't respond. He scanned the floor, the ice above, the cracks between the rubble. The humans must have escaped the wreck after crashing and sought shelter inside the den. But why take the cubs with them? Protection? Hostage? Experiment? He heard a faint cry deeper inside. Karl charged forward. The tunnel twisted into a narrow passage barely wider than his shoulders. Ice scraped his fur as he forced his way through. The corridor opened abruptly into a cavern glowing with fractured light reflected through frozen stalactites. And there, at the center, was a sight that made the Alpha freeze in complete disbelief. His cubs lay curled against a metallic object radiating soft heat. Their chests rose and fell steadily. Their small fur tufts twitched as warm air brushed over them. Beside them knelt a human. A woman. pale-skinned beneath layers of torn survival gear. Her breath trembled in the cold. Frost clung to her eyelashes. Her hands hovered protectively over the cubs as though shielding them from the chill leaking through her failing heater. She looked half-conscious, one knee sinking as exhaustion overtook her. The only thing keeping her upright was the instinct to guard the young she wasn't even related to. Carl stepped forward with a snarl. The woman's eyes snapped open. She lurched back, shielding the cubs with her arms. "They're alive," she whispered hoarsely, voice raw. Don't take them from the heat yet." Her words hit him harder than the wind outside. She wasn't threatening. She wasn't fleeing. She was protecting them. Chekor hissed from behind. "Move aside, human!" But the woman shook her head reflexively, even though she stood no chance against a single warrior, let alone an alpha. Carl raised a hand to halt his pack. "Do not touch her." Chekor blinked. "Alpha? Do not touch her," Carl repeated, voice firm. He approached slowly. The human trembled as he neared, but she did not abandon her shield over the cubs. Her breath was ragged, her face pale with cold. Yet she held her ground. "Why?" Carl asked quietly. Her lips parted, but her words emerged thin. "They were freezing. I couldn't leave them. I used what power I had left to keep them warm." Carl examined the device, an improvised heater built from repurposed ship components. Its energy cell had less than a sliver of charge. She must have rationed it, keeping the cubs warm at the cost of her own body heat. "Your kin attacked ours," Carl said. "Why save mine?" She swayed, nearly falling. "Because they're children." Nothing in her sense suggested deception. Only exhaustion, fear, and sincerity. The ground suddenly trembled. Ice cracked along the ceiling. A chunk shattered behind Carl. The storm was hitting the mountain. He stepped between the human and the falling shards. Her eyes widened at the gesture. The cavern groaned. The tunnel behind them collapsed with a thunderous crash, plunging the cavern into a vibrating silence. Their only exit was sealed. Chekor shouted, "Alpha! We are trapped!" Carl did not answer immediately. His gaze remained locked on the woman keeping his cubs alive despite every instinct that should have told her to run. He lowered himself to her level, his voice steady despite the chaos outside. "You will not die here," he said. "You saved what is mine. By our law, I owe you life for life." The woman blinked, barely processing the words before darkness claimed her, and she collapsed against him. Carl caught her. The storm roared overhead, burying the world. Inside the frozen silence, an alpha held his cubs, and the human who had kept them breathing. Their fates were now bound together. The cavern trembled with distant thunder as Carl eased the unconscious human to the ground. Her breathing was shallow, each exhale misting into the cold air. She had pushed herself beyond her limits, and it showed in every tremor along her limbs. The heater beside the cubs flickered faintly, energy nearly spent. Carl examined the device with a frown. Whatever power kept it running was slipping away, and if it failed completely, the temperature in the cavern would plummet. The cubs, still relying on its warmth, would not survive long without an alternative. Chekor paced behind him. "Alpha, we must clear the exit. The storm will bury this place. If we wait too long..." "We cannot move them yet," Carl said. "The cubs need warmth. And the human will not withstand the cold outside." Chekor's eyes narrowed. "She is not our concern. She saved them," Carl reminded him. "And our law binds us." The warrior exhaled sharply but bowed his head. "Then what is your command?" Carl scanned the cracked walls. The collapse had sealed the primary tunnel entirely. The only other possible exit lay deeper inside the den, through the older hunting shafts, dangerous, unstable, and riddled with ice fissures. But the storm outside was worsening. Staying here meant burial. Moving meant risk. He chose the risk. "Wake the human," Carl said. Chekor hesitated. "Why?" "She understands the device. And she may know a path we do not." Arachekor knelt reluctantly and tapped the human's cheek with two clawed fingers. Human! Wake! She stirred, groaning softly. Her eyelids fluttered open. For a moment, panic shot through her expression as she saw the towering figures around her. Carl crouched, lowering his voice. You are safe. The cubs live. You kept them breathing. She swallowed shakily and looked toward the two small bodies nestled against each other. Good, she whispered. They warmed up after a while. I couldn't leave them. Her voice cracked at the edges, but she forced herself upright. She was barely steady, but her hands reached immediately for the heater, adjusting its controls with practiced precision. What is your name? Carl asked. Elena, she whispered. Elena Ward. Carl nodded. The storm sealed the exit. We need to find another way out. Can you walk? She tested her weight carefully. Yes. Slowly. Arachekor scoffed. She will slow us. Carl shot him a warning glance. She comes. Elena looked between them, her expression tense but determined. Your cubs first. I can help keep the heater running if we're careful. Carl lifted the cubs gently, placing them against his chest beneath his heavy cloak of fur. Their small bodies nestled into his warmth instinctively. Elena adjusted the heater to minimal output and clipped the power cell into a compact, portable configuration. Won't last long, she murmured. But long enough to move. Carl nodded. Show us the strongest path. Elena blinked, confused. You want me to lead? You know the way you came, Carl replied. And you know this human technology better than we do. For the first time, a flicker of cautious confidence crossed her face. She rose unsteadily and pointed toward a narrow side passage. My ship crashed through an upper tunnel. The hull tore a path downward. If we climb back through the wreckage, I think we can reach a natural shaft near the surface. Carl motioned for Arachekor to scout ahead. Check for serpents. As the warrior disappeared into the corridor, Carl watched the human carefully. She was exhausted, shivering, but her hands remained steady when she checked the heater strapped to his chest. You risked your life for them, he said quietly. She met his gaze, breath visible in the cold. They were alone. Scared. Hurt. I couldn't leave children like that. You had no reason to help our kind, he said. I didn't need one. Her answer baffled him. Most species acted with clear motives, fear, survival, advantage. But her choice had none of those. It was instinctive. Protective. Irrational, yet admirable. He stored the thought away. Arachekor returned. The tunnel is stable for now. No serpents. But the storm is shaking the ceiling. Move, Carl ordered. They climbed into the narrow corridor. Elena squeezed through the tight spaces with ease, but the Varkun had to crouch low, scraping their shoulders against the ice. Crystals broke under their weight, chiming softly as they fell. Above them, the wind roared through cracks in the ceiling. The deeper they went, the colder it grew. Elena hugged herself. Temperatures dropping fast. We need to move quicker. We move as fast as the cubs allow, Carl said. Do not rush your steps. She nodded. Light flickered ahead, reflections of twisted metal. When they reached the chamber, Carl paused. The remains of a human craft lay crumpled in the ice, half buried, smoke frozen midstream in long crystalline coils. Scorch marks blackened the walls. Elena inhaled sharply. That's what's left of my ship. What caused you to fall? Carl asked. Something hit us, she said quietly. A projectile. Not from your people. I checked the trajectory markers. It came from the mountains west of here. Arachekor stiffened. West, that is Varric's territory. Carl felt a dark weight settle in his chest. If Varric had shot down a human craft inside his lands, he might have planned to use it as justification for escalating the conflict. And if Elena survived? She became evidence he could not allow. He would try to kill her. Carl's grip tightened protectively around the cubs. We continue. They climbed through the wreckage. Metal groaned beneath their feet. Elena pointed upward toward a jagged opening. This is where the hull broke. If we climb through, there's a passage that leads to the old hunting shafts. And beyond that? Carl asked. The surface. Maybe half a kilometer from the den. Half a kilometer in a superstorm was a death sentence for humans, but Carl could carry her if needed. He went first, pushing aside bent struts with his strength. The cub stirred beneath his cloak, warmed by both the heater and his body heat. Elena followed, struggling past the fallen pipe. Rhakor assisted reluctantly, offering an arm to steady her. The moment they reached the upper tunnel, a deep vibration shook the floor. Carl braced against the wall. Elena's face strained of color. That's not the storm. Rhakor unsheathed his claws. Movement above us. Heavy. Many. Carl inhaled sharply, recognizing the scent carried through the tunnels. Varric soldiers. The human had been found. Carl lowered his voice to a whisper. Stay quiet. Do not move. Elena tightened her grip on the heater, eyes wide. Carl listened, hearing the faint metallic clatter of armored boots echoing through the ice. The enemy was closing in. And there was no turning back. The ice tunnel vibrated again, this time with a sharper rhythm, boot strikes, deliberate and coordinated. Carl pressed a hand against the wall, feeling the tremor travel through layers of frozen stone. Varric soldiers. Elena's breath grew shallow as she listened. They're armed. They always are, Rhakor muttered. Carl raised one finger, signaling silence. The troop movements were spreading, branching through the tunnels like hunters tracking scent. They weren't searching the den blindly. They were following a trail. Elena's trail. Carl pulled the cubs closer beneath his cloak and lowered his voice to a deep whisper. We cannot confront them here. This passage is too narrow. Elena swallowed. Then where? He pointed ahead. The old hunting shafts. Larger space. More room to move. And more room to be found, Rhakor said. Better than being trapped, Carl replied. They moved quickly, following the angled tunnel upward. Frost fell like dust from the ceiling as the storm above battered the mountain. Elena kept one hand against the wall, steadying herself as she climbed. The heater hummed weakly under Carl's cloak. How much power remains? He asked. She checked the tiny blinking indicator. Barely enough for another hour. Then it must be enough. As they reached the bend in the tunnel, the faint glow of natural light reflected down through cracks. The storm's shifting sky cast a pale shimmer into the shaft beyond. The old hunting chamber was enormous, an oval cavern shaped by generations of pack hunts. Ice pillars rose like ancient trees, their surfaces etched with claw marks and ritual carvings. The cavern carried the weight of tradition, battles, and long-forgotten stories. But today it held new danger. Carl stopped abruptly. Elena bumped lightly into his back. What is it? He pointed toward the snow coating the floor. A deep trail of boot prints cut through it, fresh, deliberate, leading straight toward the far exit. They're already inside, Rhakor said through clenched teeth. Carl listened again. Voices echoed faintly. Varric's troops were one passage away. He motioned for Elena to stay low. We move behind the pillars. Keep silent. If they see us before we reach the far passage, we cannot escape. Her nod was small but determined. They slipped behind the first pillar. Carl carried the cubs cradled against his chest, keeping their small whimpers muffled. Elena crouched beside him, keeping close to the shadows. The troop voices grew clearer. No sign of the human yet. General wants her alive long enough to confirm the crash. And then? A low laugh answered. Then she disappears. Elena stiffened. Carl felt the tremor in her breath. He leaned close, voice quiet but assured. Stay focused. You are not alone. She nodded again, eyes determined. They moved to the next pillar. The soldier's torchlight flickered across the cavern, beams sweeping dangerously close. Carl pressed his back against the ice, muscles tensed. Aurechekor gripped his spear, ready to strike if necessary. A beam of light grazed Elena's boot. Carl clamped a hand over her shoulder, pulling her closer, shielding her with his body. The soldier's light passed over them, lingering for a heartbeat too long, then drifted away. A narrow escape. They slipped behind another pillar. Elena's whisper reached him. "Why is this general after me?" Carl kept his eyes on the patrol paths. "Varric thrives on war. If your ship crashed in his territory, he will twist it into fuel for conflict. A live human threatens his narrative." She exhaled sharply. "So he wants to silence me?" "Yes." "And you're risking your life to protect me?" Carl didn't answer immediately. The cub stirred, reminding him of the reason this all began. "You saved my young," he finally said. "That is not a debt I ignore." Elena held his gaze for a moment, fear and gratitude mixing in her expression. "Then we get out of here together." Aurechekor hissed softly. "Soldiers moving to the far exit. They are blocking our path." Carl scanned the cavern quickly. There was only one route left, a narrow ledge running along the upper wall, accessible by a short climb. Dangerous, icy, but unguarded. He pointed. "There." Elena's eyes widened. "We climb that?" "Yes," Carl said. Aurechekor grimaced. "With the cubs? And the human?" "We have no choice." They approached the wall silently. The ledge was thin but stable enough for their weight. Carl tested it with his boot, no cracking sound good. He turned to Elena. "I will lift you." She hesitated only a second. "All right." He hoisted her upward with surprising gentleness. She grabbed the ledge, pulling herself onto the narrow path. Aurechekor followed, claws gripping the ice easily. Carl climbed last, one arm supporting the cubs while the other dug into the wall for balance. The ledge creaked but held. Below them, soldiers continued searching, unaware of their presence. Elena whispered, "The passage ahead leads back toward daylight. Once outside, we'll be close to the open ridge." "And Varric's territory," Aurechekor muttered. Carl moved forward carefully. "We reach the ridge. Then we run for the windbreak cliffs. Once there, the storm will hide our tracks." They made slow progress. Every step required precision. Elena braced against the wall, Carl shifting his weight so the cubs remained secure, Aurechekor keeping watch. The heater's faint hum vibrated faintly against Carl's chest. Then a sharp crack split the air. Elena froze. "What was that?" Carl felt the fracture before he saw it. The ledge shifted under his weight, eyes splintering downward. "Move!" he commanded. But the ledge snapped. Elena screamed as the world tilted. Carl lunged, grabbing her wrist before she fell. Aurechekor seized his alpha's arm, bracing them both. Below, a soldier spun at the noise. "Up there!" Torches swung toward them. "Carl, they've seen us!" Aurechekor snarled. The cubs whimpered in fear against Carl's chest. Carl pulled Elena up with a burst of strength, pushing her toward the safe portion of the ledge. "Go!" Arrows clattered against the wall below, shards of ice exploding upward. Aurechekor roared. "Alpha, we cannot stay!" Carl shoved him forward. "Keep moving!" They sprinted along the narrowing ledge, ice cracking behind them with every step. Soldiers fired again, energy bolts streaking past, melting trails in the frost. Elena reached the exit first, sliding through the gap into a steep tunnel lit faintly by storm-touched daylight. Aurechekor followed, dragging Carl after him just as another blast hit the wall, collapsing the last section of ledge. The tunnel sealed behind them in a burst of falling ice. They were safe, for the moment. Elena leaned against the wall, breathless. "We need to keep going." Carl adjusted the cubs, checked their warmth, then straightened. He met her eyes. "From here on," he said, "we run together." Outside, the storm raged, waiting for them. And Varric's soldiers would not be far behind. The return to the valley should have carried triumph. The storms had passed, the cubs were alive, and the den stood as proof that two species, once wary of each other, could survive side by side. But as Carr descended the ridge with Aaron and the cubs, the air carried a sharp metallic tang. It was the scent of engines. Human engines. He froze. Aaron felt the tension ripple through him like a drawn cable. "Please tell me that's not a skiff," she whispered. A harsh whine split the sky. Then a second. The clouds parted as two sleek craft dove low, searchlights slicing the valley with cruel precision. Aaron's breath caught. No. No, they weren't supposed to find me this fast. Carr focused on her, voice low. "These are your hunters?" "They're not mine," she said. "They're corporate recovery teams. They don't come to help, they come because they think something valuable slipped out of their hands." "And you are valuable," Carr said, understanding settling like stone. "Not me," Aaron corrected. "My research. My ship carried data from the frontier. Unstable planets, resource anomalies, ecosystem reactions to human presence. They don't care if I'm alive. They care if the data survived the crash." The first ship swept across the valley again, spotlights striking the snow. Carr shielded the cubs beneath his cloak of fur. "They will find us," he said. "We cannot outrun machines." Aaron clenched her jaw. "Then we don't run." Carr studied her. Human eyes, small, bright, burned with a fierceness he had not understood before now. "You stand with us," he said quietly. She nodded. "You sheltered me. I won't let them take your home apart to get what they want." A low growl built in Carr's chest. "Then we protect what is ours." The descent of fire. The skiffs landed hard, sending gusts of snow swirling across the valley floor. Aaron pulled the cubs further into the den's shadow while Carr stepped forward, towering, still but ready. 3 humans emerged, heavy armor, frost-damped visors, rifles powered with blue plasma coils. The leader's voice amplified through a helmet speaker. "Aaron Locke. Step forward. We're here for the flight recorder." Carr muttered. "They shout as if claiming the wind." Aaron ignored the quip and stepped out, hands raised. "Your scanners should already tell you, it's gone." The leader paused. "We detected a power signature. Your crash site's beacon was active for weeks before it died. That beacon was on the ship's spine," she said. "The recorder was in the cockpit. It burned up." "We'll confirm that," the leader replied. "Move aside." Carr's claws scraped the ice. "She has answered. You will turn back." The soldiers pivoted, rifles rising. "Native," the leader said. "Stand down." Carr didn't move. Not even a twitch. Aaron saw the moment the humans miscalculated, saw arrogance override caution. "Carr," she whispered, stepping between them. "Let me talk." A soldier fired a warning shot at her feet. Carr roared. The sound shook the valley, a primal bellow that sent ice cracking. The soldiers recoiled, but training held them steady. Aaron grabbed Carr's arm. "If you attack, they'll call reinforcements. We can't win a war." Carr's breath came out in clouds of fury. "War is not what I choose. But neither do I choose surrender." An unlikely bargain. Aaron raised her voice. "You want the recorder? Fine. It's buried in the den collapsed from the storm. You won't get to it unless he lets you in." Carr shot her a startled glare. "You will let them search our den?" "Trust me," she murmured. The leader hesitated, suspicious. "Show us." Aaron gestured toward the den. The soldiers followed, stepping carefully across the ice. The inside was dim and quiet. The cubs hid deep among furs, trembling. One soldier wiped frost from his visor. "It's intact," he muttered. "This place is stable." The second soldier aimed a scanner. A soft ping echoed. "I'm reading a power source. Deep. Could be the recorder." The leader nodded. "Start digging." Aaron folded her arms. "You break anything or scare the cubs, and he will rip through you before you can blink." Carr loomed behind them, wordless promise blazing in his eyes. Minutes passed in tense silence as the soldiers dug through snow and collapsed stone. Aaron watched the scanner's blinking display. She recognized the frequency. Her heart thumped. It wasn't the flight recorder. It was her medical pack, the emergency battery she'd buried when she first arrived, still barely flickering with residual charge. The moment the soldier unearthed it, she stepped forward. "That's it. Dead as I told you." The soldier frowned. "This isn't." Aaron cut him off. "You wanted the only power signature. That's it. Everything else is gone." The leader examined the object. "This would fetch nothing. If you're lying." "I'm not," Aaron said calmly. "And staying here longer puts you and your equipment at risk. The valley's unstable. You saw the fissures outside." That part wasn't a lie. Carr's roar had fractured the ice. The leader considered, gaze flicking to Carr, then to the trembling den roof. Finally, he signaled his crew. "We're pulling out." Aaron exhaled shakily as the soldiers exited. Carr watched them go, listening until the skiffs lifted into the sky and vanished over the ridgeline. Only then did he speak. "You lied," he said. "I misled," she corrected. "You protected us." She looked at him. "You protected me first." The human who stayed. The cubs emerged cautiously, chirping with relief. Carr nudged them toward the firs before returning his attention to Aaron. "You cannot remain here," he said. "Your people will return." "They will," Aaron agreed. "But not soon. Their scanners found what I wanted them to find." "And when they come again?" She looked at the valley, at the den, at the cubs who had grown comfortable curling against her side for warmth. "Then I'll be ready," she said. "I'm not leaving." Carr's voice softened. "Your people made you fear them." "I don't fear them," she said. "I fear what they'll destroy without meaning to. I've seen it happen on other worlds." She paused. "If I go back, they'll use my research to justify expanding here. You and your kind wouldn't survive the arrival of domed cities and mining fleets." Carr lowered his head, eyes reflecting the glow of the den's fire. "You choose us over them. I choose what's right." A slow nod formed. Then, a rare expression crossed his face, something like pride. "Then you are Pack," he said. Aaron felt something in her settle, solid and sure. "Then let's make this place safe for all of us." A den of their own. They spent the evening repairing cracks in the den's walls. Carr carved new support beams from frost-hardened wood while Aaron checked the cubs for any lingering injuries from the earlier fright. Snow drifted outside in peaceful sheets. The storm-scarred valley glimmered under distant starlight. When the repairs were done, Carr lowered himself beside the fire. "You could lead many," he said quietly. "Your mind cuts through danger like a blade." Aaron managed a small smile. "And you? You're the only reason I made it this far." "We survive because we stand together," he replied. "That is all leadership means." The cubs curled around them, warm and soft, breathing slow and rhythmic. Aaron exhaled deeply. The den felt whole again. Not just a shelter, but a home. "What now?" she asked. "Now," Carr said, "we prepare. Your humans will learn that this valley is guarded. And should they return," he placed one massive hand over hers, "they will find more than an empty den." Aaron squeezed his hand back. "They'll find a family."